The moment I realized the company was heading straight off a cliff wasn't during some dramatic boardroom meltdown or a mass layoff. It was when Chase Reynolds renamed the operations Slack channel to Vibe Command Central. I was cross-referencing federal compliance tags on our patent updates, while someone named Sasha from BizDev asked if we could turn the monthly audit into a TikTok series. That wasn't sarcasm. That was Tuesday. By Friday, I'd done 3 people's jobs. Rewrote a client renewal packet that had somehow replaced our legal footer with a link to Chase's personal blog. I fixed it quietly. No applause, no raise, just another sticky note on my monitor labeled Chase's Disasters. Fix later. I told myself I'd let it slide. I'd survived founders who vape through meetings and project managers who cried over Jira boards. I don't rattle easy. I'm Lauren Carter, Senior Compliance and Systems Architect. The quiet one. I'd been at the company since the second espresso machine had to be crowdfunded by interns. I built our back end, filed our first patents, even escorted the first compliance auditor out when he tried to flirt with our CTO. You want things to run? You call me. I don't need a stage, just version control, 2 monitors, and a little peace. So, if you're still here and part of the 90% watching without subscribing, go ahead. Hit that button. It keeps the caffeine flowing. Now back to the descent. When Chase took over, it felt like a swarm of LinkedIn influencers invaded a functioning business. Overnight, culture shifted from methodical and sane to move fast, break things, ghost the client. He was 27, CEO by inheritance, not merit. His father, Mark Reynolds, had built this company from a garage startup into a pre-IPO powerhouse. Then, he semi-retired, handing the crown to his son like this was a monarchy, not a corporation full of payrolls, audits, and federal liabilities. Chase didn't hate me. He just didn't see me. I was legacy software, useful but outdated. He brought in fresh talent, a woman who hosted a podcast called Brand Witch, a guy named Tyler who wore a beanie year-round and built strategy decks using emojis instead of numbers, and, I swear this is true, a chief of vibes. My title, Founding Technical Officer, didn't mean much in that new ecosystem of kombucha taps and mental health Mondays, but I kept working. I was the bridge, legal, product, and engineering. My code and documentation kept us compliant and our servers upright. When they needed me, I was a hero. When they didn't, I was furniture, something to bump into on the way to a pitch meeting. I didn't complain. I documented. I had a folder labeled CYA and a private Slack channel with no members but me. Every red flag went there. NDAs Chase forwarded to interns for training, botched compliance exports with my initials left on them, unapproved patent edits. I wasn't angry. I was archiving the downfall. Meetings became theater. Chase loved to pace and talk about making compliance sexy, which was rich coming from a guy who thought SOC2 was a crypto token. I'd sit in back, correcting his jargon in my notebook while interns clapped. Ignorance wasn't the issue anymore. Performance was. Beneath the motivational posters, bolts were coming loose. Sales used expired pricing models. The CTO was exploring other projects. The last 2 engineers who understood our infrastructure left, unnoticed. No one looked. No one except me. Then came the whispers. Restructuring. A new org chart missing my name. Stopped answering direct messages. My access dropped on 3 internal tools overnight. No notice, no reason. But I didn't panic. I backed up everything. Then I opened the original founding documents. I'd signed them with Mark a decade earlier. People assumed old paperwork lost power after funding rounds. They were wrong. There it was. Article 4, Section 2F. The founding technical officer cannot be removed without unanimous consent of the board. A relic, but still legally binding. I reread it 20 times. Not because I doubted it, but because I knew Chase would. When the email arrived at 6:03 p.m. Friday, I didn't flinch. Subject: cleaning house. Body: effective immediately, Lauren Carter is no longer with the company. No call, no meeting, no CC. Just hashtags and hubris. I read it 3 times. Then I noticed the timestamp. Friday night. Classic. No witnesses, no noise, no fallout. Just a coward's exit strategy. Slack began dimming. One by one, my channels went dark. Engineering heritage, legal bridge, exec only. I didn't say a word. I just stood up, grabbed the box labeled "If the Day Ever Comes," and began packing. Henderson Compliance Notes, 2014 R&D Flowchart, the hackathon mug Mark spilled Red Bull into and called holy water. And my backup drives, 2 of them, one for weekly syncs, the other for archived patents, handoffs, and security protocols. No tears, no panic, just procedure. When I tried to badge out, the scanner blinked red. Denied. The security guard, new kid, gave me an apologetic shrug. I used the side exit. The office lights dimmed behind me like closing credits. Chase thought he'd ended something. He'd only lit a fuse. I pulled into my driveway at 6:41, engine humming, sky turning that gray blue that always feels like the end of something. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. Anger's a reaction. I was in analysis mode. I brewed a cup of rooibos tea, sat at my kitchen table under the hum of a single bulb, and pulled out the black binder I'd labeled Founding Docs, Originals. The edges were worn, the clip gold, tabs labeled Bylaws, Governance, Protections. I flipped through until my finger stopped on the one page that mattered. Article 4, Section 2F. The founding technical officer shall not be removed or reclassified without unanimous consent of the board of directors. It was dated, notarized, signed by Mark Reynolds himself, with crisp ink that looked like it had been waiting to be weaponized. I didn't write a cover note. I didn't even overthink it. I snapped a photo, attached it to a blank email, and typed only one thing in the subject line. Subject: per Article 4, Section 2F. 2. Legal counsel at Hawthorne Capital, Com. Our largest investor's law firm. Then I hit send. No body text. No signature. Just a clause and silence. Noise is for people without proof. I closed my laptop, poured another cup, and let the stillness settle. Chase was probably still at some rooftop bar, clinking glasses, talking about cleaning house. The irony was that the house he thought he'd renovated still had my name written in its blueprints. Saturday morning, I watered my garden. My phone buzzed with nothing of importance. A delivery confirmation, a weather alert, silence where noise used to live. I didn't check my inbox. That's not how leverage works. You don't chase an answer when you already know how the story ends. By the time the sun began to fade, I'd already imagined how Monday would unfold. Investors would see the email. Their lawyers would verify the clause. Someone would whisper potential governance breach. The temperature in the boardroom would drop 10 degrees. Sunday evening, a small ping broke the quiet. A RID receipt. Someone at Hawthorne had opened the attachment. No response. Just that thin, digital acknowledgement. The fuse catching light. Monday morning, I woke before my alarm, made black coffee, and checked my calendar out of habit. I shouldn't have had access, but it had missed a few hooks. One event blinked on my screen. Urgent compliance discussion. 3:00 p.m. Attendees: Chase, Mark Reynolds, CFO, HR Director, Series B Representative, Hawthorne Legal. No agenda, just urgency. I pictured the scene. Long oak table, over-designed water bottles, awkward small talk. Chase pretending to be calm, while a half-dozen professionals silently dismantled his ego. Mark, silent and tight-lipped, wondering how his son had turned corporate succession into a lawsuit waiting to happen. I wasn't in that room. I didn't need to be. I was in the documents, in the servers, in the clause. Still, for my own satisfaction, I opened a new note in my personal drive and titled it, Board Fallout, Predictions. Mark stays neutral until liability is confirmed. Chase blames HR, then legal, then me. Series B rep demands documentation within 24 hours. Word breach appears by 3:27 p.m. I was off by 2 minutes. At 2:55, I got a ping from my private inbox. Access request. Compliance docs folder. No sender name. Just a secure DoShare link. They were digging. Then at 3 o'clock sharp, the board meeting began. I couldn't see it, but I could imagine it. The air thick with polite panic. The lead attorney unfolding a printed page like it was a summons from God. Harrison Cray, counsel for Hawthorne, clearing his throat. Before we begin, I'd like to read one clause for the record. Chase, leaning back in his chair, smirking. Go ahead. Article 4, Section 2F. The founding technical officer shall not be removed or reclassified without unanimous consent of the board. Silence. Not stunned. Heavy. Mark's window on mute, chin in hand. Chase's smile faltering. That's a formality, he said. We're not still bound by early drafts, right? Wrong move. Dana Reeves, Series B rep, lifted her head like a hawk spotting prey. We're bound by executed agreements, Chase, not vibes. Mark unmuted. I didn't vote. Did anyone? Dana asked. Harrison flipped a page. No record of a vote, no minutes, no termination packet. In fact, he slid another sheet into frame. Miss Carter's share class includes governance protections. She's entitled to reinstatement and damages in the event of unlawful removal. Chase blinked. Wait. Damages? Dana's tone dropped. You fired an executive officer without a vote. That's breach. And right then, the silence grew teeth. The silence after Dana spoke wasn't the professional kind. It was the kind that made people sweat. You could almost hear the gears turning behind every frozen Zoom square. Someone shifted in their chair. A pen clicked off screen. Chase tried to laugh, but the sound came out brittle. Come on, let's not overreact. We're talking about paperwork from 10 years ago. Harrison didn't even look up from the binder. Governance isn't vintage, Mr. Reynolds. It's binding. Mark's face appeared on screen, camera slightly tilted down, the light gray in his beard catching the edge of the monitor. Chase, he said, voice calm but heavy. Did you call a vote? Chase stammered. I sent an internal notice to HR. We're modernizing leadership. Dana leaned forward. Modernizing? You mean removing a named founder without a board meeting? Without a motion? Without signatures? The CFO, who had been silent until now, set his pen down. That doesn't meet compliance standards. It doesn't even meet common sense. HR tried to jump in. We got an email after hours. It said, remove Lauren Carter immediately, new era, no dead weight. There were no attachments, no documents, no approvals. The sound of that email being read aloud hung like smoke. Chase's smile vanished. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes darting across faces that had stopped looking friendly. Harrison flipped another page. Per Clause 2F, her removal without a board vote is void. Which means, legally, she's still your founding technical officer. The CFO muttered, and if that's true, every action taken since Friday could be invalid. Someone exhaled sharply. The word invalid landed like a dropped weight. Dana crossed her arms. You've exposed us to litigation. Investors, insurers, everyone will need to know why a protected officer was fired by Slack message. Mark's gaze didn't move from his son. I trusted you to handle transitions with care, not ego. Chase swallowed. Dad, it was supposed to be symbolic. Symbolic? Mark snapped, voice rising for the first time. You just declared war on our own governance structure. Harrison cleared his throat and laid out another sheet. There's more. Ms. Carter's employment agreement was amended after Series B. She's listed under Schedule K as a key personnel officer. Dana frowned. That's tied to our insurance covenants, isn't it? Harrison nodded. Correct. Removing her without board approval triggers an automatic notification to our D&O insurer. What does that mean exactly? Chase asked, though his voice was already trembling. It means, Harrison said, each word deliberate, your directors' and officers' liability coverage is frozen pending review. If they determine this was an unauthorized termination, the exposure transfers to you, personally. The room didn't breathe for several seconds. Even the hum of someone's laptop fan seemed loud. Then Dana's assistant, off-screen, whispered something. Dana's face paled. She's not just key personnel, she said slowly. She also holds patent attribution on the product we're demoing next quarter. The CFO's head snapped up. If she's reinstated, we can't use any of that IP without her written consent. Harrison nodded again, tone clinical. Correct. Any filings or product iterations post-Friday could be frozen, potentially millions in suspended value. Greg? Mark rubbed his forehead. You just locked the company from the inside out. Chase leaned forward, desperate now. We can fix it. I'll talk to her. Dana cut him off. You don't negotiate after a breach, Chase. You comply. Off-screen, someone's phone buzzed. The HR director's eyes darted to her messages. It's from Callaway Insurance, she whispered. They're requesting documentation, effective immediately. That was the death knell. When insurance gets involved, the bleeding's already begun. Harrison sighed, closing the binder softly, the sound final. I suggest we initiate reinstatement protocol before this escalates. Chase stared blankly at the screen, pale, motionless. You're reinstating her? After everything? She never left, Dana said. No one spoke after that. The sound of distant HVAC filled the void. That sterile, mechanical breathing of an office realizing it just suffocated itself. I wasn't there, but I could picture it. Chase's jaw tightening, Mark's silence cutting through him, Harrison's calm precision slicing what remained of his authority. They'd spent months turning process into performance, but the paperwork remembered. And so did I. When the boardroom's silence finally cracked, it wasn't Chase who spoke. It was the meeting assistant announcing, joining now, Trish Holleran, Senior Risk Counsel, Callaway Insurance. Her name alone changed the air. The kind of lawyer you call when the house is already burning. Her video tile appeared. Black suit, severe hair, dark lipstick, not an ounce of patience. She scanned the faces on screen like a surgeon about to cut. Good afternoon, she said. Her voice was low, unhurried. As you're aware, our team has received notice of a potential governance breach under the Series B Key Person Agreement. Before we proceed, I need to establish facts for the record. No one volunteered. Who authorized the removal of Ms. Lauren Carter? Chase tried to find his voice. I did, as acting CEO. It was a leadership transition. We didn't expect it to trigger... Trish raised one eyebrow. You didn't expect your own insurance clause to apply? She didn't wait for an answer. Our records show no board vote, no resolution, no legal review. Ms. Carter's name appears on every one of your compliance and patent filings. Under Schedule K, she's listed as a key executive whose removal requires procedural clearance. You bypassed that. Do you understand what that means? Dana leaned forward, tone dry. It means coverage suspension. Correct, Trish replied. Effective immediately, all D&O liability protections are on hold pending review. Any actions taken since her removal will be considered conditional and may be void. The CFO looked sick. That includes the investor contracts signed this weekend. Trish nodded once. and any product filings or licensing agreements derived from her IP portfolio. Chase gripped the edge of the table. Wait, that's half our pipeline. We can't just freeze everything. You already did, Trish said. The moment you removed a protected officer without procedure. Mark pressed his fingers against his temple. This is catastrophic. Trish didn't flinch. It's preventable. Reinstate her immediately. Issue a formal acknowledgement of breach and cooperate fully with our audit. If you don't, Callaway will issue a coverage denial letter before end of business. HR cleared her throat, voice trembling. We followed instructions from Mr. Reynolds. The message came through Slack at 6:05 p.m. Friday. It said, and I quote, "Remove Lauren immediately. Legacy roles must go." Trish turned her gaze back to Chase. That message originated from your account? He hesitated. Yes, but it was symbolic. Symbolic doesn't exist in corporate law. She cut in. Intent doesn't nullify obligation. Dana folded her arms. You heard her. We need a reinstatement protocol. Today. Chase looked to his father for rescue, but Mark's expression was stone. She built this place, Chase. You tore out a structural beam and called it modern art. The CFO exhaled. If Callaway denies coverage, we're personally exposed on any shareholder litigation. Trish closed her tablet. We'll circulate a formal notice of hold. Expect an external audit team by Wednesday. She gave one final glance around the room. If Ms. Carter has retained copies of original governance documents, and given what I've read, she likely has, your best course is full transparency. Anything less will be interpreted as concealment. Her screen went dark. The meeting window felt colder for it. No one moved for several seconds. Then Dana spoke quietly. We'll prepare the reinstatement letter. Harrison, coordinate language with counsel. Mark, I need your signature before 5. Mark nodded slowly. Done. Chase finally pushed back his chair. You're all overreacting. She sent one email. 1. Harrison didn't even look up. And it was enough to collapse your coverage, compromise your governance, and freeze your valuation. That's not overreaction. That's accountability. Chase stood, red-faced, then realized he had nowhere to go. Back in my kitchen, I refreshed my inbox once. One new message. System notice, company access restored. No emoji, no greeting. Just a line of code acknowledging the inevitable. I opened Slack. Everything was there. The archives, the logs, even Chase's Friday command. My folder labeled Phase 2 blinked patiently at me from the top of the drive. Notes, timelines, contingencies. Not revenge, just readiness. While they scrambled to explain their disaster, I poured another cup of tea. I didn't need to raise my voice. I never did. Paperwork was already speaking louder than any of them ever could. The board reconvened within an hour, emergency session, no introductions this time. Cameras on, expressions grim. You could feel the panic under the surface. Everyone pretending this was just routine governance housekeeping, while their careers teetered over a pit. Harrison, ever the calm surgeon, reopened the meeting. Per Article 4, Section 2F, he said, voice steady. We're required to correct the record. The founding technical officer's removal was unauthorized. This board must either retroactively approve it or void it entirely. Given the insurance exposure, I recommend immediate reinstatement. Dana didn't even let him finish. No vote. We reinstate. I'm not risking a coverage denial over ego. Mark leaned forward, face drawn but composed. I second that. Harrison nodded. All in favor? Hands raised across screens, except one. Chase. He sat motionless, lips tight, eyes burning into the camera. You can't just undo this, he muttered. She undermined me for months. Stop, Dana said. You didn't lose control because she undermined you. You lost control because you never read your own contracts. The CFO added quietly, and because you mistook leadership for a hashtag. Harrison didn't wait. For the record, reinstatement is unanimous minus one abstention. Ms. Lauren Carter resumes her position as founding technical officer, effective immediately. All subsequent actions taken after her termination are null pending compliance review. He paused, letting it sink in. And to be clear, this constitutes formal acknowledgement of breach. The word hit like a hammer. Breach. Chase slumped in his chair. The digital clock in the corner of the call ticked forward, marking the exact second his authority evaporated. Mark exhaled. I'll handle her personally. No, Dana interjected. Let counsel handle it. You'll just make it sentimental. We need her cooperation, not a family reunion. Mark didn't argue. He knew she was right. The investors wanted control back before rumors spread. They'd already begun drafting statements, spin phrases like temporary restructuring and governance review, hoping the markets wouldn't notice the rot beneath. But paper remembers. Across the country, I watched my inbox light up with new subject lines. Reinstatement confirmation. Compliance access restored. HR workflow reversal. Every system that had once dimmed now flickered back to life. I logged in, scanning the files, calm as a surgeon prepping for a second operation. My CYA folder still intact, the Slack logs preserved, the governance binder backed up in triplicate. Chase had deleted nothing because he never knew where to look. I didn't reply to any of the reinstatement emails. I didn't need to. Their silence was enough. At 6:12 p.m., another message arrived from Mark Reynolds. Subject: Can we talk? I stared at it for a full minute. Then I typed a single sentence. We already did. 10 years ago, when you signed the clause, and hit send. By Tuesday morning, the company was a battlefield of polite panic. HR released a memo calling my departure a misunderstanding. Legal circulated new compliance training. The interns, bless them, posted heart emojis under the announcement like it was a birthday. I reopened Slack quietly. Channels that once ignored me now buzzed with frantic activity. Threads labeled urgent governance questions, policy rollback, insurance audit prep. Everywhere I looked, my name was there again. At Lauren will review. Ask Lauren before legal. Lauren's clause. I didn't gloat. I documented, the same way I always had. That afternoon, I met with Harrison over video. He looked exhausted but oddly respectful. They'll want to issue an official apology, he said. You're entitled to damages and full vesting of your remaining shares. I'm not here for theater, I said. Just make sure they understand the clause isn't just about me. It's about process. They forget process. They lose everything. He nodded. I'll note that for the record. By sunset, Chase's access had been restricted. His Slack avatar grayed out. His executive email bounced. Dana announced an interim leadership review. And me? I was still in my kitchen, tea cooling beside the keyboard, the same calm hum in the background. I hadn't shouted, leaked, or begged. I'd simply enforced the architecture they'd all forgotten to read. When the foundations shift, the noisemakers fall first. And sometimes the quiet ones write the next chapter. By Wednesday, the company didn't sound the same. The Slack emojis had gone silent, replaced by timestamps and legal summaries. HR worked out of closed channels. Finance stopped posting coffee memes. The Vibe Command Central Room that once blasted startup slogans was archived by noon. Its final message, a single line from the new interim COO. Effective immediately, all communication must follow governance protocol. I almost smiled. That day, my reinstatement hit the wires through a sanitized press release drafted by Hawthorne's PR team. The board welcomes back founding technical officer Lauren Carter following procedural clarification. They made it sound like a calendar sync issue. The investors, of course, knew better. Inside those glass towers, the words procedural clarification translated directly to insurance disaster narrowly avoided. By afternoon, my inbox filled with polite messages. Glad you're back. You are always the glue. We should grab coffee sometime. Every name attached to those messages had ignored me for months. I archived them all into a folder labeled Damage Control. The next email that mattered came from Harrison. Ms. Carter, D&O coverage reinstated. Audit complete. Effective immediately, Mr. Reynolds is suspended pending review. It was cleaner than I expected. No fireworks, no scandal headline, just quiet, administrative precision, the kind that ends empires without a single shout. Around 5? Mark called again. This time? I answered. Lauren, he said softly. His voice sounded older than I remembered, thinner. I didn't know he'd... You did, I interrupted, gently but firm. You knew he didn't understand what he inherited. You just hoped the paperwork would hold him together. He sighed. I wanted him to build something new. He did, I said, a compliance case study. There was a long pause. Then, quietly, thank you for not destroying us. I didn't need to, I replied. The rules did that for me. After the call, I stepped outside. The air was cold, sharp. A neighbor's dog barked somewhere down the block, the world blissfully unaware that a corporate kingdom had just been disassembled by a single paragraph of text written a decade ago. That night, I logged into our internal server. My server. Everything was still organized the way I'd left it. Folders named patents, governance, escrow, and one final archive called legacy. Inside it, the first mock-ups of the product we built before Chase even joined. Every line of code signed off, time-stamped, attributed correctly. The foundation of what they'd tried to erase. In the folder's top corner sat one new subdirectory, automatically generated by legal after my reinstatement. Breach Resolution Docs. I opened it out of curiosity. Inside were PDFs of the board minutes, insurance notices, and the reinstatement order bearing every director's digital signature. I scrolled to the bottom and saw it. The final recorded line from the meeting, written by the secretary. Per Article 4, Section 2F, Ms. Carter's removal was invalid. Her authority remains continuous. Continuous. I liked that word. I printed the page, slid it into the black binder, and set it beside my desk lamp. It hummed faintly in the quiet. Later, I received one last notification. Slack. Admin. Notice. Account deactivation confirmed. Chase Reynolds at. I stared at the name for a moment, then closed the window. That was that. No ceremony, no confrontation. Just digital silence swallowing him whole. The next morning, I drafted my own message to the team. Not to brag, not to lecture. Just one line in the general channel that had once been drowned by noise. Paperwork is a system of memory. Treat it kindly. Then I logged off. In the end, I didn't need revenge. I had documentation. I didn't burn bridges. I let gravity do the work. The same contracts they ignored had become the scaffolding that held me steady while they collapsed. I made another cup of tea, looked out the kitchen window, and watched the sunrise cut through the city skyline. The company would survive, different, slower, quieter. And somewhere in a binder marked Founding Docs, a single clause kept humming like an engine that never died. Silence, it turns out, is louder than applause. 3 weeks later, the investors convened again. This time, it wasn't an emergency session. It was an autopsy. No PR filters, no rebrand euphemisms. Just raw accountability in a boardroom that smelled of tension and disinfectant. I wasn't required to attend, but my name was on every line of the agenda. Governance Review. Founding Technical Officer. Continuous Authority. I watched remotely, camera off. Dana Reeves chaired the meeting now. Chase's square on the screen was blank, labeled Connection Failed. No one asked where he was. Everyone already knew. Rumor said his resignation letter came through a lawyer, short and typo-ridden. Something about creative differences and future opportunities. Translation: he'd been advised to disappear quietly. Harrison began the session, flipping through a binder thicker than a phone book. "We've completed internal review," he said. "Findings confirm multiple procedural breaches tied to Friday's unauthorized termination. Insurance reinstated. Coverage active. Compliance restored." The CFO nodded. "What about valuation?" Dana tapped her pen. "Stabilized. Investors like accountability. Turns out competence trends better than chaos." A faint, nervous chuckle rippled across the table. Then Mark spoke, voice low. "And Lauren?" Harrison turned to his notes. "Fully reinstated. All shares vested. Retention clause activated. By the way, her documentation saved us 3/4 of legal exposure. Half the audit team said they've never seen archives that clean." Dana added, "She's the reason this company still exists." That one sat heavy. Even through the pixelated feed, I could see the guilt behind their eyes, the quiet acknowledgement that the person they'd ignored had built the very structure keeping their chairs bolted to the floor. Mark leaned back, hands folded. "Then let's talk about the future." Harrison closed the binder. "The first step is policy revision. The second, well, maybe we stop hiring for vibes." That broke the tension. Someone laughed, exhausted but genuine. By the time the meeting adjourned, I'd already drafted the updated compliance schedule. My name reappeared under signatory authority, technical and legal systems. It looked right, balanced, precise. Afterward, Dana called me privately. "You didn't have to save us," she said. "I didn't," I replied. "The clause did. You could have sued." "I could have," I said, sipping coffee. "But lawsuits make noise. Clauses make history." She smiled faintly. "Investors want to know if you'll stay on." "I'll stay long enough to rebuild the framework," I said. "Then I'll automate my own exit. The next person can inherit the system, not the mess." "Smart," she said. "Predictable. I like that." "I'm not here to be liked," I replied, just to make sure no one forgets to read the fine print again. When the call ended, I opened my desktop folder one last time. Inside, Phase 2. Completed. Subfolders neatly organized. Board response logs, insurance audit, governance patch notes. Everything time-stamped, nothing emotional. I transferred it all to a private drive, encrypted it, labeled it, continuity seed, just in case. The following Friday, exactly 1 month after cleaning house, I walked back into the office for the first time. The place looked different, quieter, smaller. No neon slogans, no beanbag zones, no mood lighting. Just desks, monitors, and the low hum of people actually working again. An intern held the door for me. "You're Miss Carter, right? The clause lady?" I almost laughed. Something like that. When I reached my old desk, the same mug was waiting. The one from the first hackathon, holy water scrawled in fading marker. I set it down, powered up my monitor, and waited for the system to boot. The background flickered for a moment before the login banner appeared. "Welcome back, Founding Technical Officer." Simple, clean, continuous. I didn't stay long that day. Just long enough to see the systems running, backups syncing, new names populating the structure. For once, it felt like balance. Before leaving, I slipped a single sheet of paper into the filing drawer marked Founding Documents. A note, Handwritten, dated the same day as my reinstatement. Never confuse noise with progress. The quiet ones build the walls that keep the lights on. Then I locked the drawer. Outside, the air smelled sharp and clean after rain. I took a long breath, the kind that feels like punctuation. I hadn't burned the place down. I'd simply reminded it who wrote the blueprint. And somewhere deep in the server logs, under Governance, Legal, Article 4, Section 2F, a single line still pulsed quietly like a heartbeat. Continuous. Silence was my language. Paper was my weapon. And the clause was immortal.